Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of the Paper Cuts Podcast. My name is Brando Castro, and joining me tonight on this special episode, the gadget-slinging Avenger, Jim Manderson. Yeah. The always sexual and sassy Dan Jackman.
Yes, I'm feeling very tight over here.
Oh, Jesus. And the smartest man on the planet, Mark Mercury. Mark.
I've only done what I had to do.
Oh, Jesus.
By the way, you can call me Dan Jupiter from now on.
Dan Jupiter? I thought you liked the.
It's okay. I'm sealing away my my Polish ancestry.
Oh, okay.
Danny Jupiter sounds like a fucking Bowie character.
Damn.
Yeah.
And last week last week it was the Mercuries and Brando Mars, and now it's Jupiter's. We're floating around the solar system as now. Alas, tonight we'll be attempting to answer an odious question about one of the comic industry's most acclaimed works, that being Watchmen, and the question being,
What is the question, Brando?
who watches the what? No. The question being, who is the true hero, quote unquote, of Watchmen? Now, this is obviously an abstract question, but we're going to do our best to answer this. We're going to be hosting a 4-way debate tonight amongst ourselves to answer this. And to prove all our intro title cards aren't complete rubbish, the defendants are as follows. James will be representing Night Owl. Kung Fu pose. Dan will be representing the Silk Spectre. And Mark will be representing Ozymandias. And also myself, I will be participating on behalf of Rorschach. As a reminder for all of us in the room, us gentlemen, and for the people at home, the lovely esteemed viewer, the way this is going to work is we're going to do this debate in turns. After we each give an opening statement to present our platform to you guys, we're going to move into a turn-based debate system where one of us will control the conversation. We will expound, give a sort of argument, supporting case for our character's claim to the title of Hero of Watchmen, followed by a cross-examination portion where we'll be questioning our peers in the room to see what kind of details we can pry, perhaps weakening or strengthening our own stance. So everyone understands? You got it, guys?
Mm-hmm.
All right. General nods and jibber jab.
General nods.
General nods. Reported for duty. So, before we get to all of that, we're going to start with our opening statements, starting with Jim. The order has been decided beforehand. So, Jim, lead us off.
All right,
Tell us why Night Owl is the man.
Heroism, especially within the context of this story, is pretty hard for me to define. I think that's sort of maybe one of the points of this is, deconstructing the superhero and maybe heroes themselves, So I'm glad that you kind of left that open for us to define for ourselves.
Absolutely.
I myself really see no real true heroes in this story. It's a lot more morally ambiguous than most other superhero genre fare. The way I see it breaking down for my reading is intention versus result of action. What a person wants to do versus the effectiveness of what they wind up doing. That seems to be the question that's being asked of me as the reader in assessing the content of the characters, which is an odd thing for me to find myself doing. Looking at it in that way, I have to go with Dan Dryberg as being the hero, because I think that he's simply the least besmirched out of all of them. By the end of the story, I don't really feel like anybody has really done anything all that noble. I think that it's a pretty fucked up world and everybody did something pretty bad, except for Dan. And I think out of all of them, Dan is probably has the best heart. He's not necessarily the most effective out of all of them, but he's the best person. I think in a slightly lighter story, in a world that isn't quite so dark, he would be more like Frodo from Lord of the Rings. Like, I think if there were a ring in a Mount Doom, I think out of all these people, the only person worthy of carrying the ring would be Dan, to use an analogy from somewhere else in geekdom. That's more or less where I stand.
Okay. Very, very clean. Thank you, Jim. Dan, you have the floor. Please expound.
I am representing Lori Jaspizek and and that's a Polish last name, and I do not know how to pronounce it, so I'm gonna do my best not to butcher it. Daughter of Sally Jupiter, Silk Spectre 2. And this is gonna be amazingly short. I believe she represents everyone's best intentions. I believe she is the light and the glint in everyone's eye represented in Watchmen, or most people's eye. Everyone that really truthfully counts. And for that reason, she has to be the hero of the story.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. Mark, please let us know the truth in your heart.
It's a tough world out there. And the people in charge of it have to make some tough decisions. The only one of these characters that's willing to step up and make those tough choices to save the greater society, to save the world, to save humanity is Ozymandias. All of these other characters either give up and don't try, or else they're horribly ineffective, working on such a small scale that they're never going to save the world from its imminent doom. This isn't our world we're reading about. This is a doomed world, and one man, and one man alone, saves this doomed world from extinction. That's not a what if, that's not a was it worth it, that's simply stating he saved the world. No one else in this comic can claim to have saved the world.
Thank you very much, Mark. Okay. So for myself, what I believe at the heart of the question we're asking today is another question, I think. A more age-old question. Do the ends justify the means? Now, we've all read this story. Watchmen's a tale that offers us a myriad of morally ambiguous questions, but I feel like this is the central theme that the overarching plot wraps around. And the climax of the story is very conducive. It punctuates this question very purposefully and illustrates a scenario in which one character has decidedly answered this question for us, for behalf of the world. And that character is Rorschach, aka Walter Kovacs. In the face of those overwhelming odds, in the face of Armageddon itself, he chooses to sacrifice his life. And admittedly, I'm going to open with it, in part of character flaw because of his stubbornness, but also because of an unrelenting belief in individualized justice. He has a certain stint, he has an understanding of the morality of the reality he's in, which does put him at odds with most of humanity. But despite that, I believe he displays a deeper understanding of what it is to be human, more than any of the other Watchmen. This is why I believe he chooses to go out every night and condemn those who he feels have betrayed their humanity, and he just relegates them to an unhuman image in his head, dogs that need to be put down. There isn't any other character in the world of Watchmen besides Rorschach that stands up for everyone's right to be judged individually based on their character and their actions, and not merely to be a means to someone else's quote-unquote higher end.
Brando's Channel, October 15th, 2015.
Yes, that's where it begins. So we've given our cases to you, the audience. That is where we start. Jim, lead us off into the first portion. Give us perhaps a more constructed statement for Mr. Night Owl, and then we'll start answering your questions. Please.
You got it. Basically, everybody else is fucking awful. Like, these people are terrible. Like, I love them, all these characters, to death. I love this story. I love how intricate it is, and I love how well fleshed out all the characters are. They really are pretty human. They got good qualities and bad qualities. Rorschach is a fucking sociopath. He's like possibly the worst out of all of them that we've selected. I mean, the comedian is the absolute worst. He's a nihilist.
Yeah, nihilist. We don't believe in anything.
Anything, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
At least those guys were ineffective, though.
Say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism. At least it's an ethos.
You know what it is, and I think that Rorschach has a similar ethos. I think that Rorschach's ethic is fascist, if anything. I mean, the guy is fucking homophobic. He wants to investigate potential homosexuality as a moral failing. He's xenophobic. He sort of represents that, anti-commie Cold War fear. He's really, really like this kind of spooky I don't want to say this is a political thing, but he's got that like lone wolf right wing fucking, like, he's just out there killing people because he thinks that they're human cockroaches and he's gonna lead them to their child pornography and heroin or whatever the fuck he says, you know.
Until bubbles up around them, I don't know.
It's just like the city. He describes the city that he's allegedly supposed to be saving as being a rabid dog, and all he's doing is wiping the flecks away. And he's trying to figure out how to do that more effectively. But it does betray the content of his character to a certain extent that he just, he doesn't like any of this, and that spooks me. He's not a good guy. I think he's just punching the world because of the whole weird sexual thing that he has going on. And that fucking bugs me. Ozzy, I see where he's going. I understand what he thinks he's trying to do, but I don't agree with it at all. I think that his intention is to kill millions of people because he thinks that if he doesn't do that, then more millions of people are gonna die. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And within the context of the story, I don't necessarily see any reason to believe that nuclear annihilation is inevitable, okay? Even if it was inevitable, okay? Even if there is going to be some sort of, nuclear holocaust and Ozzy successfully averted it by doing something that's fucking horrifyingly evil, right? You see pretty clearly in the end, given my reading, that history is going to repeat itself. I don't think that Veidt's utopia would be infinitely sustainable. I think that it's in reality probably pretty similar to this historical character that he admired so much. I think he probably only succeeded in building a temporary empire that is going, under the constraints of human suffering, will continue. Silk Spectre, I don't have a whole lot I don't have many cruel things to say about her at all. She was a pretty great character. I think she's another person who just doesn't want to, she's somebody who just doesn't want to see anybody get hurt. She's out there trying to help people for the most part. Myself, Dan Dryberg, the second Night Owl, his intention to me is really clear. He's just imitating somebody that he perceives as having been a hero. He's imitating the original Night Owl. He's really the closest thing in this to a superhero that we get. He is chastised towards the end, I think pretty accurately, by Ozzy as having a sort of schoolboy heroism quality to him. That's what he's out there doing, you know what I mean? The worst thing you can say about him is that he's got a bit of naivete about how to approach things and how to fix these problems, that he's looking at things on a slightly small scale. I don't think that that's all that damning. I think out of all of them, he's, really out there fighting the good fight. And by the end, even when things wrap up, I mean, he just takes off with Sally and continues doing what he was gonna do. He's out there stopping people from hurting other people. That's pretty heroic to me in a world full of whatever mass murdering sociopaths. That's round one for me.
All right. So, do you have any questions you'd like to pose towards us, or do you just want to pass the mic going forward?
I mean, I think the questions can flow back to me, from here. I mean, I just basically launched a fucking... I punch every single one of you in the face for the most part. I mean, if you guys have anything to say to me, I think that would be more appropriate.
Okay, we'll open it to
I
that
have
then.
something to say to you.
What you got, bud?
Please go ahead.
You were positing that nuclear Armageddon was possible
Yes.
within the context.
But not in...
But what we have here at the end of issue 3 is a discussion between Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, and several other top aides regarding their strategic moves moving forward. They say that the invasion of Afghanistan has already taken place by the Soviet Union, and they say that if they move into Pakistan, that it's going to be assumed that they're moving into Western Europe as well, and that at that point they are going to launch a first strike within 7 days.
Yeah.
That means that regardless, the entire Eastern Bloc, Moscow, Warsaw, Berlin, Bucharest, are going to be eliminated.
Okay.
Everybody in the Eastern Bloc will die regardless. But even with that decapitating first strike, Kissinger says they only that'll only stop 54% of their the Soviet retaliatory force. According to their predictions, which are supposed to seem somewhat overly optimistic, I should point out, Germany, Britain, and most of Western Europe are destroyed by Soviet counterattacks. In addition, a number of nuclear missiles will make it through and destroy the East Coast. Boston, New York, Washington, Baltimore will all be destroyed. The radioactive fallout would then hit Mexico based on wind patterns, but that's only based on a fluke of wind patterns and could really end up spreading over the entire American Midwest.
Sure.
Everyone living in New York is a dead man, regardless of anything else that happens after the decisions that are already made at the end of issue 3.
Okay.
By saving the lives of everybody in every place but New York, Veidt has saved the world. He has realized that New York is damned no matter what, so he sacrifices that for the greater good of saving 1 billion people. It's a black math, but it was one that had to be done. And it's one that in our real world was done many times about, what acceptable losses would be.
Right.
And he has created a world where rather than worldwide nuclear annihilation, one city paid the price. It's not all that different from at the end of World War II, the sacrifice of 2 cities to end a war. Rorschach, for one, would agree with that reasoning. He seems to admire President Truman for the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I would say Rorschach has a lot of reasons to sympathize with Ozymandias, but there are points where the line has been crossed, and I'll get into that perhaps a little bit later.
I feel like you and I are going to wind up agreeing with one another perhaps more than Mark and I.
Yeah, by the end of the day.
And Mark, I do understand what you're saying, and I think that it's probably inevitable in this story. I will say it's probably inevitable that nuclear war would have happened. Okay, that the clock would strike 12. Okay, what we see in issue 12 is the masses of bodies around New York staining the clock. Okay, showing us that Ozzy's actions, in fact, themselves were the clock striking 12, just the same. It's shown to me, in my reading, that what Ozzy did was, in fact, a intentional massacre of human life, which is not heroic. I don't think that Dan would have done that.
Dan or Dan?
Oh, Dan, I don't know so much about that. I'm not so sure. I don't know. I'm going to wait to see what he has to say, maybe in his turn, and then I'll judge him.
You have to admit that Dan Dreiberg, you said he has a Frodo-esque character?
Yeah.
He's not. He's Sam.
Yeah.
He's
There's
got
another
kind
Frodo in
of
this story. He wears a face.
He's got this average guy kind of outlook. Now the thing is, he, like Ozymandias, inherited wealth from his parents. He could have used that wealth to try and change the world and make it a better place.
Yeah.
What does he do? Buy himself a bunch of bird-themed toys.
Yeah, he's playing superhero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very much.
That's not what
it's not heroic.
hero would do. Ozymandias moved through that phase very quickly and realized, no, if I'm actually going to make the world a better place, I have to do something better than play with toys. And you can see with the relish that he tells Laurie about everything, how much exactly Dreiberg is just a guy with tools, except his tools are used for beating up people and tear gassing crowds.
He tear gasses crowds because he has no option. He says that, God damn it, people, you left me no choice, or something like that. He doesn't say, damn it, it's whatever. He's yelling at people like, I wish I didn't have to do this, but you guys gotta clear out. In that scene where they're doing the riot controls, when things are really winding down. I also believe that, they both inherited wealth, but what the fuck, it's like Batman or something. I think
Very much like them.
Yeah, that's obviously, especially with Dan. I think that Ozzy, what he does in the end is, I think that he sees his power, I think is what he does. He takes control over the situation rather than trying to move through the world in the way that he sees is morally correct, in a good way, To address your point directly as concisely as I can, trying not to make my turn, take all the time.
You're fine.
Yeah.
What would you say to the point that Dan Dreiberg only does something when he's more of a follower, not a leader? He's a character who, many years after the original Night Owl finally faded away, and there was all the other costume superheroes, that he was driven to become a costume superhero because he wouldn't feel stupid as long as other people were doing it. He's not heroic for the sake of being heroic, but heroic because he thinks it's cool, that he essentially is a small child playing superhero, and that he doesn't do anything actually essentially for the right reasons.
Let's face it, the only reason he puts the costume back on is because the power of boners is strong.
Not in him.
He needs the costume, that's what I'm saying.
Not at the end.
Not
At the end. She takes the goggles off of him.
takes an Armageddon.
Takes an Armageddon. Let's see. Let me see if I can get your question as concisely wrapped up as I can. You're asking me that Dan does things not because it's the right thing to do, but because he's a childish person.
He's a childish person with his own greedy intentions in mind.
I don't think that they're greedy intentions. I think that they are naive and childish, but I perceive an innocence and a purity in that I do not see in the other characters. I think that what I am seeing in him is, an innocence of character, a childlike goodness, lack of corruption in his ethics and morality. In his intentions, perhaps not in the effectiveness of his actions. With that conceit.
Okay. Dan, we're going to move on to you now. So, please give us a quick monologue. Let us know what you think about Six Spectre's claim to the character title hero.
I believe that Lori Jespizik is the hero of this story, and the reason that I believe it is that she is one of the most active forces in the actual story itself. She is the one that kind of kickstarts people to action. Not all the people in the story, but a lot of the people who really matter. And really, the one that matters the most, in my opinion, is Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan is basically appealing to God. Throughout this entire book, he claims that he is not God, and if there was a God, it certainly wouldn't be him. And I believe that if God did exist, he'd be equally as ambivalent about the existence of such higher powers, that really everything is beneath him. But through the chance, through the miracle of Lori being born in the first place, it kind of sways the intentions of a God to believe in humanity, to believe in one person who he loved for not that brief of a time, but for a time, to really get involved into the fact that humanity can be saved, that there are chances in literally every little thing on this earth, and it causes Dr. Manhattan to not interfere with Ozymandias' plan, and that is extremely important because he is really the only factor that can really rid Ozzy's plan, really take apart everything that he's done, and actually made his plan possible to begin with. Also, she's the one that shows many people, like, if not for the general population, because it allows Ozzy's plan to take place, which is heroic in its own right, but not as heroic as being able to show God that it is correct and that there should be faith in man. But she's able to show Dan Dryberg to believe in himself again, a middle-aged, middling kind of overweight child man, kind of involved in his own ethics or whatever he likes to do in his spare time. And she interferes in his life, being reminded that this man exists, and is able to go and kickstart his will once again to put on the suit, to be engaged with heroics, to think back on the old times, even though she claims that they're stupid, that she would leave it all behind, that it was never important in the first place, because she's so unenthusiastic about herself being a superhero. It poises Dan to go and take the quote-unquote man's role, as he wants to be a protector, wants to be someone who is important, and wants to help people ultimately in the end. It's her that really kickstarts Dan to that end. And for that, I think it's absolutely wonderful. She's a personal hero to both Sally Jupiter and to the comedian. She is the brightness in their lives. Absolutely and 100%. Even though things did not happen to their greatest. Like, Sally Jupiter was raped by the comedian. That was something that happened. But because that happened, they ended up with Lori in the first place. And really, that's what they have to look forward to. The comedian is still in, what do they call it, the Crime Fighters Brigade?
Crime Busters.
Crime Busters. And
Who you gonna call?
Cliche.
he admires his own work, his own daughter from afar, who has her own morals and own things that she wants to do. And she's constantly being suppressed by her mother. She's kind of this enterprising spirit that is kind of going with the years. This takes place in 1985, and she really poises herself as a woman of power, not only because she is a superhero poised through by her mom, but through the fact that she is a strong woman kind of leading the ideals of the time of women who really want to move themselves forward and do anything that they possibly want to do, not to just be stricken down by someone else's will, which she was for a time. After a while, she finds that she does things because she wants to do them. It's the same thing. Like Sally is an older woman. She's in her 60s, and really that's what she has. And it's like by the end of the book, they're kind of repairing their way far relationship, and it's a really interesting thing. She has to be the hero in her life. Hulk Mason is deceased at that point in time, which is quite unfortunate because that's an old love thread. She's losing friends left and right just due to insanity or death because they're all part of the Minutemen. And really, through age and through wisdom, she's able to repair a gap, bridge with her own mother. And I think that's worthwhile too. So through the saving of all people, through appealing to God himself, and then appealing to a small amount of the superheroes inside, I think she's actually the real hero of the story.
Okay, very
Did you
good.
just try to filibuster round one?
That is all pretty good.
Okay.
It was concise.
It was interesting.
I would argue.
I guess this section portion is going to be fielding questions now, just to clarify that. Now we will be targeted. Go ahead, please continue. I have questions for him.
Sure.
Yeah.
You say she's an active character, but I've always taken away the exact opposite. In fact, the only real active role I think she takes in the entire thing, other than, as you said, pointing out at the end to Dr. Manhattan, hey, look what Ozymandias is doing, because she did not approve, but she just said, hey, look what he's doing. God came down and said, you go, Adrian, and then went away again. And once again showing that Adrian was right. But in the long term, remember that nuclear Armageddon scenario I discussed with you with the President and the Secretary of State and all were having?
Yes.
Do you remember why they were having that? Because the very thing that had kept that delicate balance of power in place for years, the presence of Dr. Manhattan, had gone away. Why had he gone away? Because his private plaything had left him to go sleep with some
The real hero.
some flabby middle-aged Barney Rubble, and so because she wanted to get her rocks off without more than 3 versions of himself and dude working in the other room, basically she started World War III. So I have very little sympathy for Ms. Just Pexic, and at the end of the day, I think that if anything, she's the most inactive. She's the only one that's not trying to do the right thing. It takes her 10 issues to even think about whether or not there is a right thing, and when she does, she's wrong.
I don't know if you want to rebuttal to that, Dan, but I'll second the notion of me being confused at her quote-unquote activeness in this story, because not in the same lens as Mark, but she always needs a dude. She needs a dude to take action. Like, she's either puppying around with Dr. Manhattan, then when she leaves him, she has to go bang Dan, who she kind of... And also, Dan, not so heroic, because he kind of has to have her powwow her out so so that he can get off his ass, but that's just for a confidence boost, less than heroics, in my opinion. Before coming back to Dr. Manhattan, and before finally settling on her American dream in the end with Dan, with the husband, and possibly hinted children. So,
She
I don't
doesn't want kids.
They're
Well,
at
no,
the very
speak for
center of
himself.
inactivity, at
Yeah,
the
that's-
center of a world of inactivity. I mean, look at the male character. First off, she's not that active because all of the roles you mentioned her playing are inspiring male characters to do something, and all of those male characters are in some way or another removed or inactive. I mean, say what you will about Rorschach being an absolute psychopath, and don't worry, Brando, I will tell you how Rorschach's an absolute
we
psychopath.
were gonna go there.
But at least he's out there doing something. So is Ozymandias. The comedian finds out about Ozymandias' plan and does nothing. Dr. Manhattan fucks off to Mars for a while, where Alan Moore loses track of how Martian physics would work, and does nothing. Dan Dreiber does nothing for years, and then does something as a sex game. And so all these people that she's inspiring with her ray of hope or whatever sort of Madonna-esque phraseology you used, it's not there, Dan.
All I know is she needed, like, you wouldn't see her actively fighting unless there was a man next to her. Just saying. I think she's just a
She's
sex.
completely disillusioned with the superhero game. First off, okay, she never wanted to be a superhero to begin with. Fully admitting to the fact that it was silly and it's people dressing up in Halloween costumes is something to make other people rethink their own position on the whole game in the first place, namely Dan. And that's kind of important because was it all silliness? Was it all just stupid fun for the sake of being fun, or did it actually mean something? And because she's able to inspire such passion in Dan, she doesn't think it's so stupid in the end too. I definitely think that she has like a ray of personal Jesus for these characters. Maybe she's
More
not
80s.
maybe she's not the most active in terms of, oh, I need to, wipe away the feral froth of the, rotting human dog condition.
Well, that's the problem that they
she's
face.
She's not actively doing that, but also she inspires other decisions in that same breath. The fact that Dr. Manhattan lets something happen, by being passive, you can also be active at the same time. You really can.
That is a direct contradiction.
No,
of
not
statements.
necessarily. I think what he's describing is the Tao of Sally Jupiter. I mean, there's a yin and a yang to that, right?
Yeah.
Like Yoda.
Of course.
I'm not trying to speak for you, but...
No, I definitely feel what you are saying. Dr. Manhattan has the power to stop what is happening, to prevent that. He can see this is the future and the past all at the same time. Time is simultaneous for him, absolutely 100%, and he can see what's going to happen, or at least perceive or change things. Hell, the guy might even be able to bring people back to life. We don't know that for sure, but we definitely don't also know for sure. So something you said earlier, Mark, that because his little sex thing went away, that he became emotionally fragile and had to go away for a while. Like if you take her away from the same room as Dr. Manhattan, he is like this emotional being. I think that he's far away from emotions, and just him reflecting on his final last human tenets of this life, such as previous relationships and structural things that are as him actually gazing back upon his humanity. She's the only one with any kind of like fire under her ass.
I don't know about that, homie.
In the pool of characters mentioned, okay? She has a fire in her heart and a will and a want to move on with her life. And she wants to live. She doesn't want to chase down some like retarded conspiracy theory. She doesn't want to do anything. She doesn't want to be a hero. And through not wanting to be a hero, through trying to live her life and trying to understand being a human and inspiring other people, she becomes the real hero.
Well, I'll let you rock with that for now. We're gonna move on to Mark. Mark, please give us our first taste of Ozymandias.
So Machiavellian. His body language is just...
If he had a mustache, he'd be twirling it now.
It's all just coming together. All right, please.
I did it!
Oh my god.
Wait. Did
I did it 35 minutes
You
ago.
already record your fucking thing 35 minutes ago?
The egotism is already.
That was master thesis.
So, do you guys like being alive? As in, prefer it to being dead?
If it means the truth is upheld.
I've never tried being dead before. I might like it. I don't know.
Feel free then.
Nah, I love being alive. Go ahead.
Cat.
Yeah.
My point being, the more people that are alive, from even a species point of view,
Especially.
the better. And Adrian's assured that. Now who do we have to compare him to here? The uncaring god, Dr. Manhattan? The nihilistic soldier, the comedian? Yes, I started with the two that we didn't do just to give them some room to breathe. But, Brando,
More.
you have Rorschach.
You have Ozymandias.
I know. Rorschach, at
Ozzy.
his core, is a complete psychopath, like Jim said.
Oh, there are psychological damages.
He's someone
I will concede those.
who sees a problem.
Yes.
He sees that Gordian knot, if you will,
Okay.
and rather than thinking to cut the knot,
Mm-hmm.
spends his life trying to untangle the mess.
Yes.
And he is
That way you
driven
keep the rope.
insane by that struggle. The rope isn't what you're trying to get at. It's the city of Gordium. And he's just lost himself in this tangle of knot to try and free himself up from it. The other two, they're even worse. They gave up on the knot. They took a look at the knot, tried to untangle it briefly, some just because their mom wanted them to, others because it was fun, and then once it was too hard, gave up. And either became the private plaything of the Army's super weapon, like...
Or become the plaything of the plaything.
Exactly. There is no point of view from which you can say that what they did was... that any of them did good things, except Rorschach. And Rorschach does so many terrible things that he has no reason to judge Vite. Every night when he goes out, he does the same thing Vite does on a smaller scale.
Yes
so
and
are
no.
they both bad?
We're both people,
No,
in my opinion,
I'm
that
saying-
understand something.
They're both good, but... or they both have good intentions, but Rorschach is so warped by the world he's lived in that he can't properly make an effect on that world.
Their good intention in this case, as you have presented it, as I heard it, is to kill people.
No, it's to fix the world.
By
Yes, by killing
It's an
hurting
expedient.
people. Okay.
At the end of the day, you know, the Nazis were bad people.
Yeah.
How did we beat them? By firebombing fucking Dresden.
Okay.
You know?
So reducto ad Hitlerum. Kill people.
I'm saying that there are many examples you can make where the best you can make of a bad situation, which is all it will ever be in this warped parallel Earth they live in, the best that they can make out of that bad situation is to say, what's the minimum acceptable loss here, and how can we get to it? And honestly, the only two characters that we see doing that we see even trying to make a difference, are Ozymandias and Nixon, and Ozymandias has a lot less dead people than Nixon. So, anybody that wasn't on board with Ozymandias is, in my mind, on board with Nixon. And the annihilation of half of the Western world and all of the Eastern world. Tell me, which of you guys are on the side of President Nixon?
Way to create a false binary there.
I know, right?
Yeah, like, good job. Like,
He's
not
already-
falling for that one, buddy.
Striking the I did it pose several times.
I am not a crook, okay? Therefore, I side with neither of those fuckers.
They side with the side of Rorschach, the side of justice.
Yeah, I can't say that. If the question to as I perceive it is not who did the best job at fucking killing people.
No.
The question is who is heroic?
Who preserved the most life?
That's not a definition of heroism by default, though.
It's not a definition of it by default, but when you think about it, when you see one of those scenes in traditional superhero comics, Superman sacrifices himself to fight Doomsday.
Yes.
Well, that's a fairly easy moral equivalency because he's willing to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
I would say it almost takes more bravery on the part of Ozymandias because it's much easier to be viewed by a villain to sacrifice someone else than it is to sacrifice yourself. He's a very Caesar-esque character, or an Alexander, if you will. And
short-sighted.
You made that point as well earlier about Alexander. Say what you will about Alexander, but he made the mightiest empire. He unified traditional enemies, and he created a way of life that overtook the most war-torn part of the world at the time, and it essentially persisted for generations after his death.
Yes. Okay.
And so, yes, it's only temporary. Everything's temporary, and that's what Dr. Manhattan's getting at when he says nothing ever ends, Adrian.
Yeah.
But in the terms of 12 issues of this story, I'm saying that we've got to start it at the beginning of issue 1 and end at the end of issue 12. Within those 12 issues, if you're looking for a moral judgment, it's been worth it. Because the world at the end is a world of peace, and the world at the beginning is a doomed world. And that is the results of one act.
Will you concede, or think about this, his name is not Ramses, right? It's not Alexander.
Ramses
it's
II.
Ozymandias.
Yes.
Okay, as in Ozymandias, look upon my works, ye mighty in despair. From the two poems, famously.
From Mary Shelley,
I'm wandering around in the desert, I found a
I
guy.
that was from a Breaking Bad episode.
Which I think almost certainly referenced Watchmen.
Yeah.
In that episode.
I didn't actually.
Dude, for another episode. But the idea of that poem is the dude's wandering around the desert and he finds this monument, okay, of a guy who thought he was fucking awesome because he solved all the problems, right? But it happened so long ago in a forgotten land that his actions are just lost. The only thing that remains of this man's actions, okay, of slicing the Gordian knot or whatever, you know what I mean, are his declaration, you know what I mean, that I've done this thing. I think that what the point there is that the solution is only temporary.
Sure.
I think that as time goes on, I don't think that what Ozymandias does is permanent. And I think in looking at it like that, I can only see it as an action of murder. He just fucking kills a bunch of people.
He creates peace through strength. And I admit that that's, in the framework, deliberately hinted that this isn't a permanent solution. The people that work at the New Frontiersmen certainly don't think it's a permanent solution.
Yeah.
But people that go around looking for the final solution end up as Hitler. The people that go around looking to solve a specific problem, like the Gordian knot, to laterally think through a complicated matter, those are the ones that manage to solve something in the short term. And I would say that really in this, none of their actions are of long-term consequence.
Yeah.
But of short-term consequence, he has saved the most lives.
You may be correct. Can I ask you one more thing, and then I swear to God I'll shut the fuck up. Okay.
Go ahead.
Is he not the fucking villain of Watchmen?
No.
No? I mean, seriously? Like, he's at the head of the pyramid. I mean, he's a Bond villain. He even says at the end, like, I wouldn't give away my thing, like a Bond villain would. He takes on that role. It's a subversion. Because at the end, because he has to. Because it's a subversion.
Because he can take it.
Okay. We keep talking about that. My thesis, what I said at the beginning was basically, it is not what I do, but what I am underneath that defines me.
Yeah, fuck
and
that.
You're fucking pulling Dark Knight shit on me. Alright, I'll shut up. I'm out of points for now.
Well, I'll activate Dark Knight Rises over here.
Here we go.
No, go right ahead, please, Dan.
For you? He
For you.
selects certain people to die, though. He's like, oh, these are the best people to die for this particular thing that I'm going to do. He's going to save the world through selecting the people, which kind of rings as fucked up.
I want to jump in right there before you try and allot some Hitler's point of views to me.
Yeah.
He doesn't select, like, say, like, gypsies, and he's like, fuck these people in particular. He selects, like, relations of Dr. Manhattan, because that works. He selects, like, the
New Yorkers.
city of New York because it's the city of the world, you know? Outside of maybe London, it's the city, you know? It's what people call the greatest city on Earth.
It's exactly like 9/11. It's a psychological blow. It was calculated against a thing, and it's not, you know, like he's prejudiced like a certain other character that I can maybe think of, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah, he's
not a bigot.
Yeah, and so let me just head you off the pass right there. He's not committing genocide. He's, I mean, specifically, I had a UNW come talk to my high school once, and he said that if Hitler had stuck to killing communists, he wouldn't have committed genocide. Like, if you just kill people based on their political leanings, that's fine. That's golden as far as the UN is concerned. He was just, you know, outside of the very specific people that were aligned with his schemes that he needed to eliminate for that reason.
By creating fear in discourse and vilifying certain people to how he sees fit.
What do you mean?
He starts to vilify people like America's savior, Dr. Manhattan, through his cancerous yearnings and all that kind of thing. He is...
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but he does create an alien enemy. That is pretty fucking clever. You know what I mean? Instead of like vilifying like I don't know,
the Chinese,
the commies. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Like
he could have easily pointed it at someone, but he didn't. He specifically had creative people come up with a monster that humanity could unite against. And yeah, he had to kill those people.
No, fuck that. Why did he have to kill those people?
Because they could have told.
No, man. Let them live on the preservation until the
Is
end
it
of their life.
easier
He
to-
just does it because he does it.
Is he a hero if your whole population believes something through lies, though? Is it really heroism? You're saving a certain amount of lives, but they also create lots of fear and it takes away rights. Is it then heroism?
George Washington owned slaves.
Oh, man.
And
Really? Going way, yeah, he did.
Yeah. But, you know, and he did a lot of terrible things. He was a commander in wartime. You have to do terrible things. He had deserters killed, like, nearly en masse. But we've created a popular conception of George Washington in our heads that's a better person. And I think because we have that bright, white, shining hero at the start of American history, a lot of the brighter parts of American history have come through because people were inspired by an ideal that never really existed.
Isn't that the point of Watchmen? These ideals are just tarnished, and you know, at
Sure.
the end of it.
But I'm saying that if they can act on that, if they aren't like the comedians who's acting upon those ideals, but only in the sense of previous volition almost, like he's already rolling down that path, so he's just gonna roll with it and have fun. Unlike that, Ozymandias has given people something to believe in. And even if it's not a real thing, it's more important that they do have something to believe in.
My question. Well, I already said I would shut up. This is too
okay.
fun, though.
It's okay.
All right. So they've been duped. Let's assume that they have been duped. I haven't. Have you?
No.
You haven't been tricked?
Oh no. We're the reader.
Okay. Alright, man. I don't know.
Oh, man.
It's all a great big joke.
Are you good?
I'm good.
Alright, we're
It's
gonna...
up to you, Brandon.
Oh, it is up to me.
Let's hear your psychopathic rant.
Let me tell you. Someone once told me, you know...
Killing animals recently?
I've been drinking eggs, you know? Straight out of the, you know, shell. Straight out of the shell. No, I once heard, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
So can we right now agree that the Nolan Batman movies are the best Watchmen movie?
You're pulling from the same thing. It's all. I'll shut up.
Oh man. But for real, just to throw out some backstory for the audience and people who don't know, perhaps in this room, but I'm sure Mark said it like at least 200 times. The characters for Watchmen were originally based off of second-tier Charlton comic characters that DC had acquired. Rorschach was going to be the Question, a character created by Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko, famously known for creating Spider-Man, co-creating. So, after Ditko gets out from under Stanley's thumb, he goes on to create the Question and then later Mr. A. Now, both of these characters have something in common, in that they kind of perpetuate Ditko's political beliefs. He was a huge proponent for Ayn Rand objectivism, and a lot of people see Mr. A as like the purest objectivist hero, even more dispassionate than Rorschach if you read some of that, but a lot less believable. I think when Moore saw that, he took that and tried to make his own version of the objectivist Question sort of hero, and Rorschach popped out with a few psychological falling outs, but still holding to those certain tenets. So what I'm getting at here in a sort of roundabout way is to let you know that there are a lot of similarities between Ozymandias and Rorschach. A lot of them are considered to be the pivotal characters, and there's a deep understanding between the two characters of the moral stink of the Watchmen world. Like, they do understand that killing is necessary in this world to create a better world. And you'd think from a certain perspective going in that Rorschach might even sympathize with Ozymandias' solution, quote unquote. But the reason why I think that he can't accept it in the end and why he feels the need to perpetuate the truth is because from the beginning he's been searching for the truth. And truth is a sort of objectivist, sainted idea that even if it is for a higher good, even if it was a better world, falsifying reality is not worth it. It just crosses that moral line. And also, I think there's a stark, perspective difference. Rorschach's out there every night breaking the bones that need to be broken, to get the answers to solve crime, to fix the world in his own way. And Ozymandias is doing it very indiscriminately in a collectivist sort of view with his gadgets at the fucking end of the world, separated from it all. It's a very dispassionate look on the world. So, the way I see it is that morally you can't justify killing if you don't have any intimacy, like if you don't have any attachment to humanity, then you can't be saying you're doing something better for humanity. So.
I think that you kind of can, because, well...
the decisions he makes
I even disagree with that point of view. I mean, when you see that he says that every night he's made himself feel every death, and that when he
How
dreams...
can you say that?
He says that.
Okay, I know.
And he says that he dreams about swimming towards a hideous thing, and it's hinted that what he's talking about is the same thing he described in the Black Freighter comic.
What was up with that?
Black Freighter was meant to mirror Ozymandias.
It's his guilt.
Yeah, it's his guilt.
Yeah, but did he read the fucking comic or not?
No, we read the comic.
The guy that wrote the comic is the same guy that created the monster.
Okay, alright, gotcha.
And so you get the idea that he must have been reading the comic if that's the guy he picked to make up his monster. And I think that he, at his core, does feel guilt.
He does,
because
at the very
he knows
end
that he had to do a bad thing to do the better thing. And I don't think it's at the very end. I think throughout he feels bad. Even when he's killing those attendants that he has in his little pleasure dome thing by opening it up to Antarctica, he's really saying, I accept that I have to be a bit of a bad guy to be the hero. And I think that's pretty much what everybody in any position of power has to do. I think that a lot of these characters get to walk away with less blood on their hands because they have no power because they've never tried to do anything.
I'm collecting myself. I'm sorry. I'm not as quick on the draw as you guys.
Rorschach views things in moral absolutes.
Yeah, black and white.
A is A. A
Yeah.
thing is a thing. That's what it is. A lie is immoral. And, that's kind of peculiar if you're dealing with somebody like Vite, where he's looking at things as a knot. I don't think Rorschach sees things as a knot.
Even
doesn't
when
see
you're
gray.
looking at Moloch, he goes into Moloch's apartment. He's like, "Oh, you have a gun. You have a gun. That you need a license for that. Get a license. I'm gonna ask you about these questions now."
Dude, he's pissed off that he has medication that wasn't approved by the FDA.
Exactly. He has this medication that's going to help him with his cancer. He has absolutely no gray lines for a character who is unabashedly no longer in the villain game at this point in time. Just an old, depressed, sad man that wants to protect himself and take medicine that will possibly help him get better from his horrible Manhattan cancer.
He doesn't have Manhattan cancer. He has Vite, tryptonite cancer.
Yeah, he thinks he has Manhattan cancer.
Well, either way, he has cancer, but the responsibility is somewhere else. So,
I'm saying that Rorschach, for a character who thinks there are no moral grays, is someone that is all about moral grays. Because what does he do? He breaks the law to enforce the law. He's worried about FDA approvals and licenses on guns and small crimes like that, graffiti and stuff. And yet, what does he got? He goes out and kills people because he's some bird gets lunatic that thinks that, because Coke doesn't come in green glass bottles and Harry Truman isn't president, that they're somehow a corrupt people. And,
but at least he takes the time to know his people.
I agree with you that he's at least trying to do something right in the world, which is more than can be said for any of the others. But he's so warped and so small scale that he's not the hero of the story.
He's the hero because he does it by himself. There's no way that he would be representative of a greater ideal if he had more people with him. You know what I'm saying? It's because he's the one that decides to take up justice that no one else will. He may go out and take liberties with the justice, and obviously he is hypocritical and psychotic. I concede all of those things. I understand that. And he is, to a degree, a bigot. No denying that either. It's just the fact. Rorschach's kind of fucked up. But the fact that he gives those people the attention, he may see a coke addict on the street. He at least takes the time to identify that he is a coke addict and then deliver the justice, as opposed to just undiscriminately killing them all and just saying I have bad dreams about it, while I'm in my fucking mansion with my crazy cat and I get to have a happy life and I'm the king of kings. I did it and this will not last. Like, at least he morally gives the people the attention, the human interaction of breaking their bones,
Oh, the sweet, kind human interaction of breaking their effing bones.
Yeah. So
I've always been curious how crazy Rorschach was from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, the seeds of insanity were placed in his early childhood, and there was nothing he could have done to prevent that, right? But then it really seems like that situation with the kid, you know what I mean, seems to have changed him.
Where he gnaws off the ear.
bites off the face.
Yeah. I mean, like, when him and Dan are palling around earlier, it seems like it's almost different.
Yeah,
he
doesn't have the weird squiggles around his speech bubbles.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah,
it's because
speech bubbles until he.
It's because he was
the whole thing with the rapist.
I didn't notice that.
He was greener. He didn't kill his victims back then.
It wasn't really Rorschach. He was Kovacs. Then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just pretending to be.
Yeah, he was
Rorschach.
just
right.
And then he earned his face that fateful night when he
freaky.
saw the dark side of the Watchmen world.
Well,
That's
let's
why you
take a look
can't-
at that for a second. He legitimately is a psychopath by any definition of the word. Like, he kills indiscriminately and he kills cruel.
And you wouldn't say Ozymandias isn't either?
Ozymandias gives people quick, easy death.
By tentacle monster, by tentacle
Nightmares
vagina
for
monster.
years.
For other people that don't die.
Yeah, okay, so he just fucking like ruins their lives. It's like that's like the mental radiation, you know, like it's like
Okay.
Beats
real radiation,
bro. Like
beats real radiation, which is what they were going to get anyway.
Look, a
And-
tarnished life is not worth living. That's a piece.
Okay, Rorschach. But you gotta understand, there's a clash in. You have Rorschach, who's created by a guy, Alan Moore, who's a self-professed kind of leftist guy. So he's not going to portray Rorschach the same way as Steve Ditko would.
Yeah.
He's not going to portray him sympathetically. I think Alan Moore is doing his best to make that character unsympathetic.
He does.
I think that, he makes him into this horrible misogynist jerk, and I'm not throwing that out there in the way of like, oh, it's misogyny. I'm saying like, actually the female form repulses him.
That's why he's
Yes.
asexual. Yeah, it's a thing.
So like,
But he's not as believable because, like, if you read Mr. A, which is a very, very right-wing sort of, objectivist, like, oh, I'm not, and he saves a little girl, from being kidnapped, kind of like Rorschach, except he does manage to save it. He lets the kidnapper die. He's like, and he has a little rant about, like, I give people what they deliver unto themselves via the actions that they do. I save good people who do good things. The good little girl. That's how it rolls, and like, it's just so like. It's so mechanical, it's not believable.
The question in one of his early appearances too, there was a guy and he's drowning in the sewer, and the question's like, well, it's not very easy to save him, and I'd be risking my life to do it, so it's totally not worth it. And it's just like one of those like equivalency things where you're like, yeah, okay, Ditko, you're pretty far out there.
I'm not gonna kill you, but I don't have to save you either.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
It continues.
I'm just saying, I have a hard time imagining Ozymandias setting a house on fire, chaining someone to it, and then giving them a saw to cut through their own arm. That's some serial killer bullshit.
He raped a girl and cut her up.
And if he really believed in moral right and wrong like he claims to, he'd put him in prison and send him to the justice system.
Where what? He'll get 20 years?
20
He ended a
years?
life in the most
For
visceral...
killing a little girl, you're getting life at worst, even in New York.
If you can prove it.
Exactly.
He found the pennies, he had the... I mean, honestly, the best chance that guy would have of getting out of prison is because he wasn't arrested by a police officer, but by some lunatic in a dress that he cut up and stuck to his face. Like...
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Rorschach wears women's clothing on his face.
Yeah, he even says that, like, I
that.
cut it till it didn't look like a woman anymore.
Because, that's when he worked at the fabric factory, and he found that fabric that changed shape. And
I just have in my head all of Hannibal Lecter's dialogue in Silence of the Lambs trying to explain to Clarice, you know what I mean? Like, getting by coveting what we see every day, you know?
One of his like main problems, in my personal opinion, is that he
doesn't
thinks
fuck
that
Dan at all.
everybody is evil. Alright?
He doesn't think everyone's evil.
Yes, he does.
Doesn't think the comedian's evil.
He
The
this
single
is-
most evil character in the
He
book.
admires Hitler. Okay, that's nice. Even so, he pretty much thinks, like, he describes New York as a frothing, horrible dog beast that he wipes away the froth on his mouth. Okay?
Yeah.
Even his shrink, Dr. Malcolm. Alright, I think that's Dr. Mal.
Malcolm Long, the guy who
Yeah.
tries to make famous on fixing Rorschach.
Quote unquote, he is like one of the nice guys of this book. The guy who's like a morally adjusted, nice dude who is trying to figure him out.
He wants to get
For the
famous.
sake- That's what he implicates. That's what he implicates because he's crazy. Because
That's what he's done.
That's what he wants.
He's also
He even
a good
says stuff
guy.
like, you could make a career off this.
sure, you could make a career off it, but for all intents and purposes, he is your perfect like upper middle class guy. He has a nice wife who wants to bed him all the time as soon as he gets home and not to think about work, and he's obsessing over this guy to figure out. So yes, maybe some things will go and suit his own needs, but he's a man with a family who needs to provide, and he also legitimately wants to see if he can save this guy. And in the end, taking this perfectly nice, normal guy, he ends up perverting his vision to the point to where he starts going crazy himself. He starts seeing ink blots and starts seeing cats and maggots and shit of that nature.
Rorschach doesn't do that to him, though.
Yes, he does.
The world does that to him. He just sees what Rorschach sees.
Rorschach does it to him through showing him that the world is a horrible place.
He asked to see it.
Planting the seeds of insanity from the insanity tree.
He didn't
himself.
do it in a malicious manner. He asked why Rorschach saw the world as it is. He explained what he sees into the world, and then Malcolm Long now understands why Rorschach does what he does. It's not
his greater truth, his greater insanity of craziness.
It's just an insight onto the stink of the morality of that world. He understands now why Rorschach does what he does. It's not his fault. He didn't come at him and be like, all right, now I'm gonna make you see maggots every night. I'm gonna show you why there are maggots everywhere, because there are maggots everywhere. This world is fucked up. That's why I have to go wipe the froth off the dog's face. Even though he does brag, in the beginning, just to say that, because I know we're gonna come back to that, where he's like, all the fucking blood and semen will rush around there, and then when they come up and beg me, I'll say no, fuck you, world. Even though he's bragging that he wouldn't save the world, in the end, ironically, he is the one standing up for the people that he despises. Because yes, he hates most of humanity because he sees their disgusting features in detail, but he still stands up for them and is not going around powwowing with blue dicks all night. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Jim, hit it up.
Remember this blue dick powwow.
So we doing round 2 now?
Absolutely, please.
Okay, we're starting with round 2. Okay.
Perfect time too.
We doing good on time.
Do you want to take a quick break, guys?
I'm good if everybody else is.
I am fine.
I'm good.
You sure you're conscious? You said you were wavering.
What?
I thought you were saying you were changing a little bit.
No, I meant when I leaned on this and made a loud noise. That's what I meant by chang.
Oh, I thought you were
there are
falling
many different Chang.
I thought you were
things
sleeping,
to
and
do.
I thought you needed the drink.
No. I leaned on this and made a loud noise. That's what I meant by
Once you start
changing.
bending over my furniture, then I'll consider you officially Chang. just bend over my furniture and present yourself to me.
We're recording all this.
Don't worry about
Alright, so
Don't worry.
which direction are we going in this for round 2?
Yeah, it's good twice. So
I mean, I have other points that I could say about Dan,
do whatever you want.
and
Spend whatever
I
time.
can also talk shit on all your characters some more. I have other ways to do that. So we can
It's-
just basically do the same thing again.
It's at your discretion.
Okay, all right. If everybody feels like they have enough material,
I can go for at least another. The second rounds could go quicker
Yeah.
at any pace. It's fine.
Okay.
So-
Excellent.
So you want me to erase that, or you just I'll
No, just keep this and keep this going, and then I'll take it all away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. All right. So round 2.
Yeah.
All right. Going. Dan, I gotta say, I do like Silk Spectre a lot. I think she kicks ass, but she doesn't really come into her own until the story has wrapped itself up. I really want to vouch for her and stuff like that, but I can't say that I really perceive her as being. If the thesis of this is supposed to be who is the hero of Watchmen, I don't think it's her. I see her as being bullied into superheroism and stuff like that by her mother. I think that she resents it. I think that she resents even being in the role of Dr. Manhattan that she's in. I don't think it's until the end when she winds up with Dan that she really is interested in the game at all. I don't think it's necessarily that she doesn't want to help people or be a good person. I do think that more than a lot of the other characters, I think that she respects human life. I mean, she seems to be the one who's the most deeply affected by the stuff that happens in New York at the end. I mean, the way she describes it and the way, she talks at the end to Dan about wanting him to love her just because they happen to be alive. I mean, that is touching. But I don't see it happening until the end of the story, So I can't really. I understand what you're saying about her being somehow seeing a spark of purity and humanity in her, but I don't think that she's the one. That's just where I'm coming from on that. Fucking Rorschach, god damn it! He's.
You wanna go?
Yeah, let's do it, man. He's a fascist. I mean, he's a fascist. I can't view that as being heroic at all. I mean, I don't even think he really sees evil. I mean, he perceives evil where I, as a reader, see normal human failings. weakness, essentially. I think he despises weaknesses in people. I mean, he views it as a moral failing in ways that I just see, like, that person had a fucked up life. Like, okay, so, like, his landlord is a hooker, you know what I mean, that's got kids. Like, that's sad. That's a sad situation, you know? But, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think that it makes it okay to take those people and, like, drop them down elevator shafts and stuff like that. Like, I don't perceive that as being heroic. Again, Vite kills a million billion people. That sucks. That is something that Lex Luthor does. That's something that, like, Saddam Hussein does. Yes, it's something that George Washington does, maybe. But I think that what I'm getting out of this is that maybe George Washington, if you're looking at shit realistically, isn't actually a hero. He's just some guy who also killed a bunch of people.
You know what's worse than being a fascist?
What's that?
Being a fucking pushover.
Okay, alright. I don't necessarily think that that's true. I don't necessarily think that that's true. And I assume you're talking about the Night Owl?
I'm talking about you. Yeah, well, Night Owl.
I'm talking about you.
No, I'm talking about Night Owl.
Gloves.
I don't think the Night Owl is a pushover at all, man.
No, I think he's a pushover entirely because you know why? He doesn't come out to do his heroics. Only he does heroics for the kicks. After the masks, the act that makes masks illegal, he quietly rescinds into his quiet life. The only reason he decides to ever take up the heroics again is because Laurie fucking shows up and she's like, oh, let's take Archie out for a spin. And he's like, yeah, let's do it because I can't get my dick up right now. So
they're two separate issues. Okay, yeah, he's impotent, at least in certain situations. It is implied that he's perhaps impotent all the time, but I don't know. And again, I think that's a very Rorschach-y type thing to fucking say. Because that is a personal failing, it's not a moral failing. It's just like a flaw, I guess.
Okay, well, let's take it. Let's take this photo. Let me get it off my chest before I finish it off. Okay, so you want to claim that he's heroic? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me, he doesn't go out seeking to do anything heroic that night. He just wants to get confidence and maybe his rocks on, and then they just happen to come across that fire where they do something heroic, and then they just continue on to save Rorschach from prison. And I don't, not to be heroic, but just to kind of keep the confidence boost going.
That night, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And at the end of the story, he rescinds and accepts Vite's plan. He's like, all right, this happened. It's what it is. It is what it is. He accepts it, and you know what else he accepts? Matt Hatton blowing the fuck out of his crime fighting partner into mush. And he's like, yeah, that's cool too. You know?
Not in the comic.
Yeah.
Nah, in the movie.
In the movie he cries. He doesn't clearly.
No.
Yeah, but I'm talking.
He doesn't see it.
In the comic, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He's
in the comic,
aware of it later.
In the comic, he accepts it.
He accepts the complication of the situation. He tries to talk Rorschach out of seeing things. By the way, he tries to talk Rorschach into seeing things as being more complicated, as being more not like and less dualistic. You know what I mean?
Oh man, duality is the only way to see things.
Okay.
Otherwise, you don't get anything done. You get wrapped up in all the jib jab.
Okay. He wouldn't, to address your first point, he wouldn't have been in a position to go up and get his rocks off and be all nostalgic with Sally. I keep saying Sally.
Laurie.
Unless he was already a fucking superhero. Like, he couldn't go out in this awesome, like owl
Archie.
spaceship that can fly to Antarctica on one round of fuel, which is, I don't know how that works, but it's fucking cool. He couldn't do that unless he already wanted to be a superhero. I think when Laurie was still a kid. I mean, he was born in what, like the 40s or something like that? I don't know when he was born. But the point is, he was already a fucking superhero. He was imitating the original Night Owl. He grew up as a little kid, you're led to presume, admiring a superhero.
Yeah.
And then he went and fucking did it. For real. And not because of like dead dog, mommy's a whore, or anything like that.
Because he
wanted because he wanted to become Ramses. You know what I mean? And not because his mom pushed him into it. It's because he wanted to. Because that seemed like the right thing to do.
I don't think he did it because he thought it was the right thing to do. He's just living out childhood fantasies, you know, because he has the possibility to. He never comes across as a genuinely heroic person who wants to go out and help people. He just falls into it. At least in this story. In the events of Watchmen, yes. In his upbringing, perhaps there were moments where he was genuinely. But in the events of Watchmen, there isn't any point in time where I feel he's genuinely going out, trying to fight for the people because he's a hero, and that's what he's striving to be. He just does it because it fits the convenience of the situation.
I think that children imitate these roles in adults that they see because that's who they intend on becoming. I think that he internalized that heroism and then aspired towards it and then succeeded it and fucking like achieved it. It's like saying that like somebody isn't really an NBA player, you know, and like isn't good at sports because they were just imitating a basketball player, and then like later on happens to find themselves in the playoffs. Who the fuck cares?
It isn't imitation that bothers me. Obviously, imitation is the way you learn. It's just that I don't feel like there's any genuine heroism inside him because he enjoys being a hero because of the theatricality and the confidence it brings him, not because he genuinely is striving towards those heroic values. The original Lionel perhaps had those heroic values where he wanted to be, you know, a better person and help people. I feel like Dan sees that, thinks it looks cool, and when he does it, he feels cool.
There's also the matter, you brought up Saddam Hussein and was comparing to, and we've been bringing up a lot of names, Caesar, Alexander, Ramses, George Washington, when we're talking about Ozzy.
Yeah.
Once again, Ozzy and Night Owl are actually very similar characters. They're both just men, but they're incredibly brilliant men who have used their wealth and ability to become superheroes, but only one of them then gets talked about in terms of great men of history. You wouldn't be comparing Night Owl to a pharaoh, would you?
No, I wouldn't want to. I don't perceive a pharaoh as being heroic. I just think he was a person who happened to be powerful. I don't see any congruence or conflation between heroism and power.
Because people with power have a greater ability to affect the world. I'm saying the primary problem with Rorschach, other than the complete psychosis, is that he lacked the power to actually affect any real change, but at least he was trying. Night Owl has the power to affect real change, but just kind of doesn't, because he doesn't care.
No, he does. He spends decades fighting crime, like a regular superhero.
Fighting crime.
Yeah.
How much do you think it costs to build that big thing? He even says it in the beginning when he's a little more sane, and he's talking about all this gear to take down purse snatchers and muggers. He builds himself a freaking super strong exoskeleton that breaks his arm once. And what could he have done if he had instead used those resources to actually change the world?
One might say
like a breast cancer charity or something like that.
Sure.
It's not what the story's about. It's about superheroes.
No, that's thinking small, but I'm still saying Ozymandias kind of comes to the realization that his resources are better spent elsewhere.
Murdering millions of people.
Right, yeah.
not making his own, like,
no,
Susan...
saving billions of people.
By murdering millions of people.
Sometimes you gotta.
You know,
Look, 27 million Russians died fighting Hitler, but you know what they died doing? Stopping Hitler.
not in Watchmen, though.
No.
And that was their choice.
No, I'm saying that wasn't their choice. They had NKVD brigades following them up shooting deserters. I'm saying that if you look at Stalin is a reprehensible human being, but in the context of World War II, he's a good guy. And the reason he's a good guy in the context of World War II is because he's the only person powerful enough to bitch slap Hitler, and that actually did it. And yes, that meant sacrificing 27 million of his own people, which is a far larger number than Ozymandias does, to avert a much more dangerous World War III. But in the context of World War II, Stalin's the hero, and in the context of Watchmen, so is Ozymandias. I've just equated my character to Stalin.
Yeah.
So at this point, I think I should pretty much just give up the debate, because I think I've just backed myself into
No,
a
I'll
corner.
relieve you of this, my friend, because neither Hitler or Stalin are in Watchmen, so it doesn't matter. The question is, who is the hero of Watchmen? Okay, it's not Rorschach, because that guy hates women and is outside punching people's faces because they remind him of vaginas. Okay, it's unfortunately not the Silk Spectre, because I like her, but she's just whatever. She ain't into it. Okay, it's not fucking Ozzy, because He's a crazy dude at the top of a pyramid. He's like some Illuminati, like blow everybody up guy. Like, that sucks. Okay, the point of Watchmen, as I said at the beginning, none of these guys are particularly heroic. But if you examine them based on the content of their character rather than the result of their actions, okay, which is, I think, a reasonable way to go about examining this, I believe that Dan is a good person and that the rest of them are fucking cocks.
Look, okay, how about this?
So,
I think I might have a split decision here with you. You're saying by the content of their character and not the result of their action.
yes.
And I might be willing to concede that, but what I am not willing to concede is that at the end of the day, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's whoever does the best thing with the situation. It's a very utilitarian. At the end of the day, the guy with the most lives wins.
Yeah.
And that's Oz.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of the day, it's more about what they did than who they were, you know? And so I have to say that if you're just looking at what they did, or in the case of Night Owl didn't do,
Yes.
then Ozymandias is the hero because he did something.
My
He changed
point-
the world for the better.
Just real quick, Team Night Spectre or Silk Owl, whatever you want.
The fuck?
They didn't really do a lot of superheroing in this book, but I will say that both of your characters did a lot of killing over the course of the book.
Because we weren't fucking.
Yeah. You were killing.
Especially not Rorschach.
See, Dan and Silk Spectre are both lovers, not fighters. And in the end,
Very
when they
Tell that to the muggers that they get off on beating up.
yeah, they beat up people.
Yeah.
All right, but they don't kill anybody. Not only don't they kill anybody, even though it's kind of suit their own moment, they do heroics through saving people, not through killing anyone. And this
Only
is the
after
only
they've gotten into their sexy lingerie.
You'll never justify.
all superhero costumes are sexy lingerie. Okay?
Which is one of the points of this comic. They're all fucking fetishists, especially if you fucking look at the comedian, who it's unfortunate none of us are representing him because he'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Mark, to get into what you said earlier, okay, I essentially do agree with what you're saying, okay? In a sense, I simply look at it in the inverse manner. I think that within the context of this story, none of these people really are heroes because the results of their actions all fucking suck. You know what I mean? I can't look at any of them as being heroic in the classic sense, you know? So failing that, I have to look at what their intentions are, what they want to do, who they are, you know? Basically, who has the biggest heart? And in that, I see Dan, you know? Not this one, although Sugar Heart's fine.
Let's put this in the context of a more traditional comic. Let's say Fantastic Four when Galactus shows up. What if the only way to stop him would have been for Reed Richards to say, threaten the existence of everything by threatening to shoot Galactus, and that was the only way to save the world? Is that action justified? Is Reed Richards the hero? Of course he is. That actually happened. He had the ultimate nullifier and was willing to extinguish all life everywhere unless Galactus played ball the way he wanted to. And we see Reed as the hero because Reed is the hero in that story because he saved every life on the planet. And I would put Ozymandias in the same category. He had to follow through a little more than Reed did,
Yeah.
but those two characters have something in common. They're the smartest men in the world.
They have another thing in common. They exist in a much simpler style of comic book. Watchmen is a fucking middle finger. It's a deconstruction of that thing. I think that Reed Richards and Galactus both fail to exist in the framework that Watchmen sets up. I'm not completely disagreeing with you.
I'm just saying there's a Marvel equivalency there, and if you think that if you can read through Marvels and say, yeah, Reed's the hero here, then there's no reason you can't say the same thing about Ozzy and Watchmen.
I can say that because it's Watchmen, which is famously a deconstruction, postmodern take on superhero tropes, possibly best established by Marvel Comics.
Well, there you have it, gentlemen. Damn. Dan, say something about Silk Spectre.
Alright, I think you guys are failing to see basic thing about Silk Spectre. She doesn't have to be a traditional hero in the way that you guys are thinking. She doesn't have to save lots of people. She's not shown as being particularly good as a superhero, but she's good at saving the people in her lives in one way or another. That's the main thing. That's what makes her the hero of Watchmen, because she has that personal savior. Okay? She personally saves Dan. She personally saves Dr. Manhattan. Her parents, alright? They each come to their own conclusion as to how the rest of their life's gonna be. Like, not everything is roses and...
Oh, sure as hell ain't.
Nothing is roses.
What?
Except at the fucking funeral.
I was going to say except in California, but
Everything is roses in California, and it's always sunny there. There is no rain. We love California. But that's much better than something else. She inspires other people to also be great, to be better versions of themselves to a certain extent. The comedian only softens up when seeing his very own daughter. Before that, he is an awful person. I mean, he continues to be a pretty awful person, but for just that one moment in time, he has to concede into himself, like, this is my daughter, this is what I created. He has to be forced to love something and to stop laughing at the joke itself. Alright? The mom only does things to Lori out of love. Even though it's not the thing that she wants to do, she does it because mom knows what's best. And a few times, being older and having that wisdom comes back onto her, saying like, oh, I was not right in hating the comedian, so to speak. And she hates him for a temporary amount of time because, oh, you raped my mother, and that was awful, and that's terrible. Now I realize the truth of why this is awful. But because later she realizes the father, and she realizes the extent of her own heritage, she realizes that this character could be seen in a good light. She understands what her mom is saying. The mom only loves the comedian because the comedian gave her Lori, which is the big shining spot in her life. She's consistently saving people from themselves, from rescinding deeper and deeper into the sadness, the madness, giving them bright points in their life. Okay, maybe she's not the ultimate end all in terms of, I'm the hero of the world, I'm, Ramesses, I killed all these people, or just doing the small crime shit and trying to affect basically nobody, bringing out the personal brand of justice that small, short-sighted vigilantes only capable of doing. But she does have her own version of heroism through not even trying to be a hero, through just being an effective human being, a human being that's trying to figure themselves out, rather than glaze over by malaise or trying to strangle people into seeing their own way. Manhandle's what I was looking for. Manhandling people to...
that just sounded like a real Tumblr word. Like, he
manhandles.
Rather than trying to man-strangle what...
his way into my heart. He should just, buy me dinner and blah, 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 blah.
No, it's not about her running around being sexually promiscuous or trying to go, I have to bang Dr. Manhattan, I have to bang Dan, or anything like that. She chooses to be in those relationships because she's her own person. She doesn't have to be in those relationships. She's like, fuck it, I'll do what I want. I think she's an amazing character on that front. She doesn't do any horrible things. She just tries to be Lori. And that's what makes her cool and inspiring and heroic. Because she's not trying to be fake.
To a degree,
She
Dan.
tries to be fake her entire super heroic career. She's faking it for her mom.
Yeah, and okay, I can level with you a little bit, Dan, on the fact that she does having personal touch with the people she interacts with. And there's, I guess, something reprehensible about that, or redeeming about that. Other than that, no, I don't sympathize with any of it. She's not effective, even in her personal relationships. Like, all she does in this is kind of act as a girlfriend. She's not even good at that. like all she does is, okay. Like, I know you said, like, it's not about her sexual deviancy. It kind of is about her sexual deviancy, because, like, that's what defines her. Like, all she is there is to be a kept woman for Dr. Manhattan until she's like, I don't feel like being a kept woman. I feel like getting some new dick, so I'll go find Night Owl.
And to be fair, Dr. Manhattan seems to suck. You know what I mean, like, I wouldn't want to be with, like, female Dr. Manhattan. Like, it's boring. It's just like
some sort of omnipotent, uncaring sort of situation.
It's just like,
Here, let me show you the silicates.
But would you want to be with a male one?
No. Wouldn't want to be with a... No.
She likes to be with Dan in the first place because he is submissive. She even makes mention of this, like, later in the comic book, that she's been with many powerful men that inspire fear and power, and that she likes Dan because he is submissive, because she is the strength. I don't know if that's worth anything.
Like,
but
where's the heroism, though? Like, I know you said she doesn't have to be a hero in the traditional sense of, going out and saving people like a normal superhero does, which she claims to be, but does not really do much of. But I don't see the heroism, quote unquote, in any definition.
she's a hero to those other people, causing those people to become heroic themselves. It's a domino effect.
To who? To Dr. Manhattan? Because,
Manhattan and to Dan.
well, Dan's a pussy whip. Like, there's nothing heroic about either of you. She likes submissive dick, and he likes...
I guess in order for my argument to really work, I have to acknowledge I can't fight you too much, because I have to acknowledge on some level that Dan is definitely heroic.
It's not my turn. It's not my turn.
So she goes ahead and inspires people, and that's great. But what does she inspire them to do? They don't do anything, Dan.
Like I said earlier, having the power to stop something and to let it happen.
We're talking in circles. It's that I take your point, but selected inaction is not heroic. Don't sell me this Gandhi bullshit. I don't need it.
You have such the right attitude for your character.
I think we all adopted it to a certain degree today. Just a little bit.
I feel like dressing up in a bathing suit and some, translucent yellow vinyl. Don't look at me.
Well, that will haunt me for the rest of my days.
But Mark.
Yes.
I think we've passed through Dan. Dan, do you have anything else you wanna kung fu out?
Like light through his translucent yellow outfit.
Nope. The sound.
No, I have nothing else for you.
Thank you.
I've made my point. God damn it.
Go ahead, Mussolini.
Mark, go ahead.
The reason Vite's the hero is because everybody else thinks he's the hero. Silk Spectre, Night Owl, Dr. Manhattan, the comedian, they all find out what happens. The comedian even found out in time to stop it. None of them take any action because they realize that what he's doing is ultimately for the greater good. And if the idea of the superhero isn't to do a small evil and break the law as a vigilante for the greater good, then I don't know what is more key to the idea of the superhero. The only one that doesn't out and out endorse Ozymandias is Rorschach.
Mm-hmm.
But he does so through implication. He admires Harry Truman for expediting the end of World War II through the use of nuclear weapons and the destruction of 2 cities. He says multiple times that the world is doomed. he is sure that that is going to happen. Some of the others aren't quite sure that it's going to happen. He knows with certainty that the end of the world is coming unless somebody does something.
His
and
secret
Vite does
identity is a
something.
guy with a signs.
Yeah, he literally walks around with the end is nigh on his shoulder all day. Everybody in one way or another, at one point or another, is certain that the world is going to end. Or if they aren't certain, they at least acknowledge it after Vite has made it clear to them. At the end of the day, I have to say, the best reason that we have for saying that Ozymandias is the hero is that by the end of it, all but the psychopathic killer have agreed that, yeah, I guess it's the best possible situation. Sometimes it isn't about what should be done, what's right in the abstract, but what's right in the incarnate, in the real world. In the real comic book world.
I wouldn't attack you semantically like that, yeah.
And they realized that realistically, it was the best of a bad situation.
Yeah.
And really, that's all you can say.
Don't you think that maybe they were misled? Don't you think that maybe Vite just convinced them of it? You know what I mean? At the end, I brought this up again, and I don't
think he could mislead Dr. Manhattan.
No, Dr. Manhattan
can be misled.
It's possible. He actually kind of does weirdly with the Tachyons, but I know that's not what you're talking about. He says he actually at the end, Vite asks Dr. Manhattan, but I did the right thing. He asks a higher authority, did I do the right thing? Is it finally over? Manhattan's response is to smile and say,
nothing.
Of course it's not, and then he vanishes off to go be God.
But then what happens? The comic ends.
Yeah, it does. And,
so something ends, Adrian.
And as I recall, the last panel is the dumb kid spilling a little bit of human bean juice on his shirt, reaching into the loony pile to pick up Rorschach's journal, which contains the truth of the entire situation.
What? He's just reaching toward the loony pile. He could be reaching for the one that's talking about the how the metal fillings in your teeth are allowing you to pick
It's
radio.
not certain at all that Rorschach's journal makes it out to the public and that everybody finds out what the truth is.
And even if they did, it's in a fringe right-wing publication.
Yeah, pretty much only Rorschach was probably reading.
Yeah, that they're going to put out. It's implied that there are two employees because when the one guy's out, he says, what am I supposed to do this by myself?
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna make the case that Watchmen starts out. I know it doesn't completely fall to this formula 100%, but it starts out as a murder mystery. Somebody killed, the comedian. Okay, a bad guy is killing superheroes, right? Then it turns out that a bad guy runs a company called Pyramid that's gonna do really bad shit. A bad guy killed a bunch of artists on an island, and that's the bad guy of Watchmen. And then at the end, it turns out that the bad guy of the story, Watchmen, is Vite.
And that he has a legitimately good reason for doing bad things.
Being bad.
I admit that he does bad things, but to good ends.
That makes him a bad guy.
No, it
He's
doesn't.
a hero of Watchmen. That's what we're looking for here, right?
Yes, and I'm saying that by going out every night and beating up people as a non-registered member of the law enforcement brigade of Gotham City, Batman is doing a bad thing. But why is he doing it? For the greater good. And that's the base concept at the idea of superheroics, is that they're doing a little bad to fix a big bad. And so Ozzy did a big bad to fix the worst, to fix Armageddon, to fix a gigantic evil.
Maybe superheroes aren't heroes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's why
I'm willing to accept that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that from the point of view of a superhero comic.
But what about the concept of time then? Like of all time, because he asks him, he being Vite, and asks to whom Dr. Manhattan at the end, as we've said many times, I did, what I did was, was it cool, man? And he's like, it never ends.
Well,
time is inevitable, and
we agreed before we started this
Yeah.
that we were going to limit the conversation to Watchmen itself. We said no before Watchmen. If I was going to point that out, I might already point out that, in before Watchmen, Ozymandias already saved the world because it would have ended in the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 if not for his
the
interference.
consequences of what Watchmen have.
I know, but what I'm saying is that's outside the bounds of these 12 issues. I'm saying that within the pages of these 12 issues, there is an end. Something did end Adrian. And within the bounds of these 12 issues, Ozymandias is the hero.
No.
I made very sure before we started this debate to make sure that we were only speaking specifically about the 12 issues of Watchmen. Yeah. So I'm not looking at long-term consequences that happened outside.
But that's his
tragic... by the same argument that Jim can disqualify me comparing him to Hitler and Stalin and stuff because it's not in the frame of reference of this comic, I'm going to say I can disqualify him from the post-issue 12 After Effects because that's not in the scope of the series.
The ambiguity is
about Watchmen.
The ambiguity is contained within
it's
the last couple of pages. Yes, the ambiguity.
Yes.
Not like the end of your argument. It's not a shutdown. I'm just saying that the question is there.
And I'll throw in some extra legalese into this, in that I feel like that is, in part, of Ozymandias' tragic flaw as a person, is that short-sightedness. Just like Alexander the Great, they had these bright-eyed ideas of bringing the world, uniting it, but Alexander having his untimely death, and also Ozzy with no qualms of what comes after. He seems to think, I did it, I'll be the best of all time, they'll always remember me, but he gives no way or thought to the consequences of these actions. He just thinks that this is the one way.
It is the one way. The other way is nuclear annihilation. And like Alexander the Great, we see a peaceful and prosperous thing. All that stuff, peace on earth, the burgers and borscht, however you want to take it. The end of the last issue shows a paradisical world. After Alexander the Great died, he died and his generals divvied up the kingdoms and everyone's like, see, he tried to form a great empire and look how it turned out. But the contact with the East brought Greece into a new golden age, the Hellenistic era. The contact with Greece brought the East into a more modern, forward way of thinking. The cultural influence of Greece managed to reach all the way to India. He managed to found cities like Alexandria, which hosted the library and light of the world.
Which was set on fire and eventually the Dark Ages
1,000 years later?
Of course.
Yes.
But now we're taking the argument post Alexander. Are you saying that the long-term effects of... Are you saying that the long-term effects of Ozymandias' plot, which you previously outlawed, I think, 3 sentences ago, are now coming into question?
I'm saying if you guys are going to bring it to that juncture, I can at least argue that in the... Okay, so in the long term, yes, what does Alexander the Great mean to any of us now? So yes, in 1,000 years from this, will Ozymandias' actions matter? Maybe, maybe not, just because of the number of people that would have been killed by a nuclear war. Which I think is kind of short-sighted on Moore's part to imply that...
it's literally the end of everything.
To imply that things would have just kept rolling on. But I think that even accepting that, you gotta understand, it'll be at least several hundred years before his actions stop having had consequence. We live in a world that's still shaken by what Napoleon did. When they asked, I forget his name, the second in command of North Vietnamese during the Vietnam War, what the ultimate results of the French Revolution were, he said it was too soon to tell, and it was 200 years beforehand. So with these types of things, you really need a long view to see.
Yeah.
And I think that because we're talking about a 12-issue comic book series that's either never going to have a sequel or will have a vastly inferior sequel done by lesser talents years later, I think that we have to take the view that he did it.
I believe that what he did was a seizure of power. He took control over a situation that he took control over a situation that was most likely going to end in many deaths. Okay, so he took control, he took power. In imitation of, really he was just a warlord. You know, I don't perceive Alexander as being, like you brought up Gandhi earlier.
He was trained by Aristotle. He's an enlightened monarch. He was the enlightened despot. And I know that word has negative connotations now, but for years enlightened despotism was seen as the preferred method of government because it's one in which you aren't hamstrung by lots of checks and balances that keep progress from ever being made, but at the same time you're being led by someone that's genuinely good and has progress in mind.
It's good. I do not perceive the seizure of power as being heroic. I don't think that those two things coalesce with one another.
All of Greece was falling into war after the death of Philip of Macedon, and Alexander brought peace through strength. It's like Caesar did at the end of the civil wars. There had been 100 years of civil war in Rome, and Caesar brought peace through strength. And that's exactly what Ozymandias does here. He brings peace through strength, and it's the only way that there's ever been extended periods of peace in world history. Think about the names of long periods of peace. Pax Romana, Pax Britannica.
Yeah.
The reason they have names like that, and you'll note that I was about to say Pax Americana, because but the idea being that the only times that there have been extended periods of peace are when there's someone there who's saying it's okay, and it's okay because I've made it okay.
I think what he was actually trying to do was to end that cycle. I think he wanted to stop people from fighting one another by fabricating a non-people threat.
Right.
Okay, for example, what he did was pretty similar to 9/11, except instead of Al-Qaeda to blame, we have a fucking made-up squid monster.
Yeah.
Which is fucking psychotic, you know, whatever, but I guess it would work. I don't know. I don't know.
According to him.
It's still not, it's...
Cornell and Moore.
And The Outer Limits and Ronald Reagan.
Right. We're just speaking in circles. I'm just saying over and over again, that still doesn't make him a good guy. You know?
Well, we have to pay attention.
Woo! Okay, Rorschach.
You know, I don't have much to say. I'm still right.
You're all scuffed.
Yeah, I mean, that's
When the drains stop up and
When the
people
drains
all
stop-
come calling to me for help, then
Look, at the end of the day, you just gotta recognize that you don't perceive people as people. You know, you being Ozymandias. Just like me. You know, we both think that most people are trash. Gutter trash. But
You know who doesn't think that? Night Owl 2.
just don't slip yourself in here. You don't even, you know.
What?
I would argue that Ozymandias doesn't see everybody as trash.
I don't
he
think
sees
so,
every life as valuable, and as such, they're all equally weighted, and so he sees saving the lives
They're
of
all equally
every
rated.
Russian.
Then why
and
does he
every
feel
European,
that the New Yorkers are less valuable to save than anyone else on the planet?
because they're symbolic.
Because they're symbolic.
If
Why they didn't
if
choose
You
to
get
be
a
that
lot
symbol.
of insight into Vite's psychology.
I think if Moscow had been the cultural center of the world at the time, I think he would have picked Moscow.
I don't think we get a lot of insight into why his personality as much as the other characters. He's just part of the structure of the story. You know what I mean? Like his backstory is hidden until like almost the end, really. You know, which is kind of interesting. Like we get all this deep biographical shit about Manhattan and all of them, really. You know, but Vite is a little bit more enigmatic. I don't know.
Vite's psychology is a bit of a enigma, as you said, but it's clear that there is a disregard for the individual, as he just chooses for millions of individuals
Yes.
to be the quote-unquote symbol.
I'm trying to think of somebody who would never do something like that. I just
Rorschach.
keep I disagree. I think that Rorschach is like fucking Judge Dredd. You know what I mean? Like judge, jury, and executioner of everybody he sees. I mean, he fucking judges Vite. He says possibly homosexual. Must investigate later.
Yeah.
Bee juice. Like, you know, but no, I think somebody
Vite sticks his arm to a countertop and slaps him. Judge Dredd wouldn't let that happen.
No.
Judge Dredd would be like 50 years in the ice cube for you.
Look, if I had the Judge Dredd tools, then I would be able to do that too. But
I think it's vaguely unsettling that you started to refer to Rorschach as I.
I'll be visiting Alan Moore. Hey, I'm Rorschach.
You should go up to him and ask him for your face.
I should.
These are big, complex issues, and clearly we're at this point going in circles.
Yeah,
We've said a lot of things over and over again because it's a complex issue. I really feel that we need somebody with the heart of a child to lead us through this. I think we need that innocent, sweet Boy Scout-ishness.
Somebody bring us the heart of a child now.
Or maybe just a grown man who hasn't lost that clear perspective.
Oh no!
You fucking
son of a bitch!
So we were talking earlier, and we were all able to say, pretty much, that Laurie really lacks a clear ethos. So we look around, and Rorschach's objectivist, and Ozymandias is utilitarian, and the comedian is nihilistic, and Dr. Manhattan is, I'm not even sure how I would portray that.
Deism incarnate. I don't know.
Yeah,
He's the son of the watchmaker. I don't know.
What would you say that Night Owl's defining ethos?
I don't think that he is. A lot of the characters in Watchmen, I think,
Freudian.
are. You're Freudian, motherfucker. You're Freudian as shit over
Hey,
there.
we both are. You get on the boat, homie. Like,
no,
Maybe that's why they got
I may have an
there's
Oedipus.
you more like there's a Freudian reading of all of these characters.
Yeah.
A lot of these people represent certain perspectives.
Wait, you mean the big blue guy with the dick out all the time might have some Freudian connections?
To answer your question, a lot of these people are almost like chess pieces. They have a move. They have that they're going to play in the story because that's who they are. They represent a certain perspective on the question, what is justice? You know what I mean? Which is so silly when I say it out loud. But whatever, that's what we're working with.
Justice.
Yeah. Night Owl, he doesn't have that like clear, I represent a philosophy. I represent a sort of simple attitude. Okay, alright, Mr. Fingers, what you got?
See, I was trying to lead you into an answer,
Okay.
but I don't think we're on the same level because I think you take too good a view of Night Owl. I think he is, at his heart, a hedonist. I think that he eats too much food. That first time you see him, he's going out to a restaurant with Laurie. He's got this whole weird hang-up with sugar. Rorschach's stealing his sugar, and the cops bringing up his sugar, and Laurie wants sugar for her coffee, and there's this whole thing about him not having enough sugar and then getting it in bulk. And so he's got this eating thing, and he's got this adrenaline junkie, thrill-seeking thing where him and Laurie get off on beating up the muggers. Yeah. And he's got this whole like sexual desire thing about Twilight Lady and that dream, and then about Silk Spectre and whatnot. And what I'm getting at here is I think that Night Owl is essentially an individual driven by pleasure. And I think that out of the five main characters with an ethos, sorry Dan, I think that his is the most basic and most almost primitive.
I think that goes to the comedian. Unfortunately, nobody here is standing in to represent for him. I understand what you're saying. Given everything that you said, all of which sticks, I think you described a nerd. I think he's a fucking big dork. He's a dork made good, though, okay? Since the passing of the Keene Act, he's been writing, like, orthonological journals. I don't know how you say that word, but it's bird words.
I think you got it.
Okay, alright, whatever, okay. He's doing that. He's also fucking trained up. He can do kung fu and punch people in the face really good, okay, which most dorky middle-aged guys can't do, okay? He's a really good hand-to-hand combatant. I feel like I'm reading off the back of a trading card right now, okay? But I don't think he's so much a hedonist. I do think he's in control of himself. And everybody in this story gets fucking lambasted. Every single person in this story gets the shit kicked out of them by the author, and we see that on the page. My whole perspective, bringing it around full circle, even though I've been saying it throughout the entire thing, Night Owl comes out smelling the best. He just smells like shit the least, because he's a good little, like, hobbit type person, like... I wish I had a better sentence to end this.
You've
with,
been very
but-
Middle Earth with
Okay.
your comparisons.
Because it's strong in its stance.
If we're talking characters,
Yeah.
I would say that if we're going for the Lord of the Rings characters, you're Sam, he's Boromir, I'm Gandalf, and you're Arwen because you have almost no lines.
You're Saruman.
Ah!
You're Saruman because you think that you know best. You think you know
You're
best.
fucking Sauron.
Yeah.
You're the villain of the story. Yes.
Nixon is Sauron.
Interesting.
In real life, yeah, maybe. The evil eye of Watergate. Oh man. Okay, let's wrap it up, guys. I think we've pulled it in. Any final comments? I think you just kind of like spewed out your last guts, but do you have anything else, Jim?
Night Owl's the best. Deal with it.
Okay. Dan.
Silk Spectre is important. Reread the book, damn it.
Ozymandias rules.
This was childish. Like, we got so deep with this. and now
Because
we're
he's a pharaoh, he rules. Get it?
that's not heroic. That's just. Then so do mob guys rule. Tony Soprano is the best because he can punch more people.
Yo,
The
dude,
Undertaker's
I just saw Black
the
Mass.
man.
I am all aboard with that. Fine, yeah. Brando. Closing statements. Maybe Jim will yell at you too.
No, he will. I'm not a mass murderer. I'm not.
He's just a
Nothing.
singleton murder.
Yeah, I'm not a mass murderer. Well, okay, I'm not a mass murderer on the millionth level. On the million level. Like I'm not in the 6-digit count yet. Hopefully.
One day with time.
No, you're just going to be the lone gunman that shoots Alan Moore. Excuse me, Mr. Moore, can I get your autograph? You're going to be... What's your middle name, Brando? I'm going to want to know this for the news.
Oh yeah, well no, not for
Dead comic book writer lying in the gutter.
Brando David Castro. How about that?
Yeah,
People come up with conspiracy theories. He must have been related to the Cubans.
No. Yeah, I'm not a mass murderer, and at least in the 6-digit sense, I'm not just a boy playing with toys, and I'm not nothing.
Not nothing. I'm gonna throw something at you.
Rorschach stands up for the individual. He stands up for the rights of at least your individual. He stands up for your soul, okay? Your soul gets the right to be judged by God when you go to heaven, you know? You get to be picked out, and you get chosen to go to heaven or hell, then, you know, varying on action. Not just because God's like, you know what, fuck it. I feel like...
Wait, isn't Rorschach the one that stared up into the nothingness of the smoke after he burnt the rapist and said, there is no God, no one's watching
Look,
us,
it's
just us, and we're all alone?
Look, hang tight. I'm not speaking on behalf of Rorschach, okay?
See, it's very hard because you say I when you're referring to him now.
It's hard.
And it's hard to...
Because there's like a lot of you and me and I, so it's easier that way, okay?
I think you gazed into the abyss and
I did.
I think that there's now a bit of Rorschach inside of you.
It's
and-
probably true, and I'm okay with that, you
It's
know?
the first time Rorschach's ever been inside anyone.
I've been eating more, you know...
Except his fingers.
I've been eating more beans lately, you know?
Fine like this. Pocketing people's sugar cubes. Jim, watch your fucking sugar cubes around this motherfucker.
Anyway, point being, even though Rorschach is clearly the objectivist hero, in my opinion, and objectivism by itself just is atheist in nature. It's inherent. You know, there are no gods and kings. They're just men and what they wrought. But still, because there are no gods, we each have to be responsible for that judgment, that individual judgment of character and of actions. He offers that to you, as opposed to just a collectivist decision. Granted, every great leader, quote unquote, war maker, etc., has made these kind of decisions. Should we tolerate them, though? Is that the question for me? And I think Rorschach represents the no of whatnot. So that's just me. But it's up to you guys. Whoever's left after God knows how much time. 2 hours, Jesus Christ. Probably a little less after we edited. But if you've stuck around to this point, congratulations, gold star. We're gonna be sending you whatever you want, except for money.
Psychic mess.
Yes,
psychic rewards of psychical, we'll send you some Rorschach paintings. Anyway.
Tijuana Bibles.
Yeah, Tijuana. Whatever we can fetch out from underneath
Well,
Dan's
we
bed.
all answered that in character. Especially since Dan said nothing.
Yeah. But if you have a response, please let us know. We had a fun time, I think. We have a good time, guys?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It was a fun conversation. If you guys have any thoughts you'd like to throw our way, leave them down below in the comment section of whatever venue we put this on. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. We love to hear feedback of what we can do to be more entertaining, perhaps more informative, a little bit of both, who knows. But before we depart, are there any recommendations around the room? Anybody?
I'm gonna do something I almost never do, and it's because I'm a dick. But I'm recommending Superman Lois and Clark. I bought it, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I don't know if it's good or not. I didn't even know the creative team, but you should buy it on principle, because this is about the Superman that I grew up with. This isn't new 2011 tough guy Superman that thinks he's the shit, although I understand they've been changing that since Convergence, but this isn't that Superman anymore. This is the classic Superman that we grew up with, and he's back, and I don't care if it's a bad comic. I want people to buy it to send the message to DC. We want our old heroes back. Please give me old Wally back. I would like that. Just one at a time. I don't even care. Just give me, give me the pre-Convergence heroes one by one even, and I will buy them. You have my shut up and take my money.
It does look like a cool series. I haven't read it either, but I saw some of the descriptions of it and shit, and like even the idea of how they drive them into the universe seems cool.
It does, yeah.
I will also kind of do something similar. Not entirely, not with such earnesty, but most because I'm just a scumbag fanboy. I bought a comic this week and I haven't even read it. Amazing Spider-Man 1 by Dan Slott, and you'll notice the cover by Alex Ross. It's beautiful. I kind of parsed through it just to see the pictures, so I know that it's of good quality. I love Dan Slott. I want him to write Spider-Man for the next 10 years as long as he's able. It's been a fun ride, and I like the concept of Spider-Man being a fully fledged adult. I know that there's a lot of fun dynamics of him as a teenager, but I've seen that for decades. I want to see what a fully grown Batman-esque, in terms of money and scale, Spider-Man is like. So please, since they're putting out 3 options, I think, on the market, main options for Spider-Man. There's this one, Amazing, and then there's Spidey, just going back to his old days, and then there's something else. Something for Miles, probably.
Spider-Man, I think it's just called.
Yeah, just called Spider-Man, yeah. There's Spidey, Spider-Man, and then Amazing Spider-Man. So, of the 3, which I will be purchasing all of, please at least take your eye and place it near Amazing, if you could. Anybody else? You guys got anything before we head out?
Then you go for it.
You guys, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 50 just came out. It is an awesome, phenomenal issue. It is the wrap-up of the previous 49 issues, and it is wonderful. It ends like the first big overarching storyline, which we'll call the Arc of the Shredder. And if you're any kind of Turtles fan, or if you're really into awesome action and really cool scenes with anthropomorphic turtles, then you should fucking buy this comic. Incidentally, issue 51 will be new status quo. So not only is it a perfect point to get all that awesome turtle ninjutsu that you've been craving, but also it leads into the best jumping on point without having to read the previous 49 issues. Get this book.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Anything, Jim? Or
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a back issue here, and this is slightly esoteric, but I'm going to recommend the January 11th issue of the Examiner, published in 1818, containing the poem Ozymandias by Percy Blythe Shelley.
Quite a back issue there indeed.
Yeah.
it's a good poem, and and where the poem in the story Watchmen, leaves off, King of Kings, look at my works in despair. It goes on to kind of say, like, look about the sands, they're fucking everywhere. words that's symbolic of how.
Sand.
Look, works of the.
Sand and shit, guys. Poetry.
I don't remember the words, so I can only summarize so much. But you know, the traveler looking upon the desert and describing the inevitability of time, and how Ozymandias is not the true hero of Watchmen. So.
I think that was actually in Shelley's notes.
Yeah.
Because, like, by the way, Ozymandias is not.
She knew she was some sort of fucking time traveling wizard or something. So.
Look upon my works, all ye mighty, and despair.
All right,
Thus, Brock, Mark,
guys. We'll see you next time. Have a good day. Have a good life. Take care.